All right, thank you for being patient. I was having some issues, plus waiting on Color Guppies is supposed to join us. You might have got into something. We'll see what happens. But I want to thank everybody for taking their time out of the day to come watch this episode of Fish Talk. It's episode 74, I believe. It is. Man, I got to fix that. I forgot to fix that in the description. I'll do that later. Whoops. But so our guest tonight is Barbara. You guys may recognize her from when was that? That was it was the third weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
She was
Almost a month ago.
Yeah, it was the 15th. That's right. Yeah. So she was with us with the auction. Vinay reached out to her. He knows her through clubs and stuff, and she was kind enough to join us and give us, or well, yeah, not really give us, but offer her fish to us.
It was lots of fun. Gotta admit.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. But I don't know. Do you want to tell a little bit about yourself, like the fish hobby relation? And then if anybody
Yeah.
had any questions, just put it in the chat, and then we'll get to it.
Sure thing. So, I have recently become involved in the fish hobby again, but I've been always involved with fish in one way or another. So when I was a child, my family always kept fish. One of my uncles is a vet, so we always ended up with like turtles and fish and dogs and everything that got sick, and we always rescue stuff. And then I started to just really like animals a lot. I worked at a pet store, so inevitably you end up with like a whole bunch of fish tanks, and I've kept everything from brackish, saltwater, and amphibians and reptiles, and you name it. Um, I got out of the hobby for a bit, just for lack of time and space. But as soon as a pandemic hit, I was able to work from home, and then it escalated quite quickly. In that year, I ended up with like 12 fish tanks. I now have like 20 something. I've lost count, 28 probably. And I started to become really involved with the clubs. I hadn't heard of clubs before. I appreciate you guys for, bringing it up to the media because they're not as popular, many of them. I did join PVES, and the obsession grew to the point where I'm now the vice president, and I really want to bring the hobby to more people and attract them to the clubs, because the reality is some of the best breeders are just hobbyists, like Skipper here and Vinay and us, that just obsess over it and are doing it more for the love of the hobby than anything else. um I do breed a few things here and there, still kind of getting settled since I moved recently, but I do like guppies a lot. I like certain cichlids. I like plecos. I do have rice fish, and hopefully pretty soon I get to start breeding Black Star Galaxy betas that I got from a local breeder. I love beta fish. I've done talks in my group about them as well. It's just one of those things. Have one in each and make sure it works. They'll be fine. I love shrimp as well. So it's like not extremely going extremely deeply into one specific type of fish, just because there's so many and I gotta try them all situation. So and as an obsession becomes more of interest, you start to associate with more people and do research and things of that nature, so you start making a lot of friends in those fields. And it pays off because then they can come to do the talks, like
Mm-hmm.
River Riley, for example, who is a researcher that studies Cory catfish. You can always like, hey, what is the news or the research about their venom slash poison or things of that nature? So the more you associate with people, the better you become as a keeper and a hobbyist. And it's honestly kind of humbling, as you go around.
Right. That that
Mhm.
what you were just talking about, that the Cory cat thing, I'll interrupt you real quick, is
Mhm.
I just experienced something 4 days ago. I lost my whole colony of sturbies.
Ooh, and Sturbice.
Everything was going good. They were eating. They weren't showing no signs of nothing. There was other fish in the tank. They didn't have no diseases. Nothing was showing. When I got home from work, all 6 of them were dead.
Hmm.
The kicker is there was nothing wrong with the other fish. These fish looked like they looked alive, but they were obviously dead. I mean, they were just still. They were just sitting there on the bottom, and they were all dead.
Huh.
So one of the things I was wondering, because this happened to me before a while back, I had Triliniatis that happened with, and I think them ones poisoned themselves because my dog was disturbing the tank.
It
Like
it
it was
can definitely, and Sturbice are well known to do that. And in general, any kind of Cory that has an orange coloration in the dorsal area or the fins, it's theorized to be a warning as to the fact that they're venomous. There is Eric, I forgot what his last name is, but there is a researcher that's studying that particular thing specifically. The research is a little brutal because they literally grab
yeah.
Cory cats and shake them and then monitor what happens to them over a certain period of time. And then they will move them immediately to fresh water, but a lot of them don't make it, especially based on the level of venom slash poison that they have. There is a debate as to whether it's venom or poison because it's technically both. They can release it and they can also inject it into people. There's been cases of people being injected with the poison itself, and they do have the glands as well. So Sturbites are one of the ones with the worst, unfortunately. So caution needs to be had. Generally, the recommendation with a lot of those Corys is to literally shake the bag and then rebag them if you're going to ship them because they do not recharge their venom for a little while. So for shipping, that works. But as you said, if there's a stressor in the tank, unless you are there to catch it and do an immediate water change or something, it could be the death to them. And there's been reported cases of them stinging each other. It's not for sure if it's an accident or what happens, but they will be affected by it as well.
The
So,
crazy thing is just like a day before I got a bunch of eggs from them.
yeah, I mean,
It was just one of those things that just blew my mind. I was like, for one, it
it is
sucked.
kind of weird. Like,
Yeah.
you would hope that they would be immune to their own venom, but I guess in the wild they can just swim away from the area and not worry about it, right? But,
I mean, I wonder if that's another thing, because they were young. I have them. I had them in a 10 gallon. Eventually, I was going to put them in a 20 when they got bigger, because I like having the food close to them to where they can
right.
get to it either
Hmm.
early or quicker. So I was like, well, I'm wondering if like having a bigger body of water, like a 20 gallon, that may not have happened. I don't know. But
Possibly.
the Dr. Anthony said that Dr. Eric Thomas does
There
it
you go. Thank you.
does
Yes.
it at the Arkoff in Peru. We're going to take. I'm going to go ahead and how long we've been doing this for about 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and say hellos because I didn't do it at the beginning. I wanted to wait till other people got in here. I'm good from that participants list. It's easier and quicker for me. Alishon, Dr. Anthony, Amisa, Bunny Viper, Dennis Christian, Freaky Fish Lady, Ken's 3D Aquatics, Mexicali Fish Keeper, Nathan Have, Patty Petit Tanks, Saints Dust Aquarium, Sky Dancer, and the Nano Aquarium guy. Thank you, and everybody else that's in the chat that's probably starting to type or that's lurking. Thank you for being here. Yeah, that's just one of the things that I love Corydoras. That's my favorite of all time fish, and mainly it's catfish altogether. The Corridors is one of my favorite. I got like four. I'd have to sit here and count how many different species I have. But
There's so many, and the lineages are so different from each other too, in a way that
yeah,
behavioral wise, it's quite amusing. So, I mean, I would have a dozen different species at least if I could, but my current favorite are the false armadas I got at the catfish convention, just because they're big, chunky boys, and they're um actually, I don't know if you can see them, but they're over there hanging out.
I'll make your screen bigger. We'll see if we can see them.
Yeah, let's see.
Your bit. Oh, there you go.
Let me see. Can I flip the screen? I should be able to, but it's not. Yeah, it's those guys over there.
Oh,
I gave them a little sand pit to play in because I used to have only gravel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
they're pretty
they're
cool.
pretty cool, and they're fairly large for Corys, So I wanted something big for the 75, and they turn out to be pretty hardy because they've survived like a move and another broken heater and situations like that. So I'm thankful for that. But there's so many species and not enough tanks.
Yeah, I messed up, and I bought this book. It has all the corridors that they have found in it. Some with just C numbers.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you start looking through that book, and you're like, oh man. There's one that I really, really want, and it's the True Parallelis. I forget the number. I'd have to look it up. But that one is just amazing to me. The markings on it, I love it. I mean, I have red Venezuelans, Millennium eyes, blue spotted Corys. I have Aspidorus. I have one of them. I have a Barbatus, longfin green Aeneas, some longfin Haliotis, and black Schultz. I feel like and I had a couple wild ones, but they didn't do well for me. I don't know if it's because if it was me or what it was, but they were pretty cool.
Well, sometimes the wild ones you have to do the whole deworming procedures and everything because they're wild, and a lot of times they're not fed very well for a long time, and many never recover.
Well, the person I got him off of, he took care of them very well. I think it could have been just the difference in the water, or who knows it. But they were actually pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I have there's C123 Peru yellow Corys. Those are pretty hardy too. They're kind of cool because they have yellow fins and like spotted bodies, so there's not a lot of them that you see that are like that. But there's a lot that I want that I just need to make room for. But
there's another. I think it's still in there. Sometimes they're hard to see because there's a bunch of moss in there. I got to clean that out again. But they call it the rust Cory. I think it's the Rabutii, or however the heck you say it. But those are pretty cool. Rabutai, I believe.
Sounds familiar, but
yeah. But yeah, those ones are pretty neat. I really like them.
I don't know what this guy wants. He wants to say hi, I think. That's Dobie. He likes to try to lick the fish water, unfortunately. And he's really good at fishing, I find out. I was moving some guppies around, and I left them in a container while I was acclimating the water. And there were 9, and then I heard the bubbles, and he's full snout just fishing for them. And next thing you know, there's only 8. So I gotta be careful with that guy. He really he thinks he's a fishing dog, but yeah. the perils of having pets. Like, I honestly don't know how people with cats do it, because I can't only imagine. I have friends that have broken lids and, you know, lots of missing fish thanks to their kitty friends. So,
I mean, from what I've seen I don't have no cats. I just got 3 dogs myself. They really like getting on top of them fish tanks. I've noticed.
yeah, yeah. I'm also I'm also an admin of Facebook group called Fish Tank Talk, and there's a lot of people there. It's one of the larger groups, so moderating that thing is a full-time job in its own. But one of the owner there, he has cats, and he adopted a really fat cat, unfortunately, that likes to sit on the lid because the light is warm, right? So he's just there chilling in the light, and there's been 3 lids that have collapsed because he's just so dang heavy. And you have to deal with glass in the tank and then wet cats, and it just doesn't sound pleasant. Oh well, one of the perils of having several pets.
Well, then you got to deal with that wet cat, especially
Hmm.
especially if it's a big one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Going back to the catfish, it's very funny how, like, well, we are obviously having to assign C numbers or the Plecos L numbers, but I found that some scientists are not really like into it because we're categorizing more by phenotype rather than what the species is. So there's a lot of people, especially I'm blanking out on names today, but there's a person that has ichthyoshingo in a Shingo River, and he also did a talk. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking out on names today, but he's like, like the 333s, the gold and the white, when you breed them together, it's the same color. And the 066 are the same species. Like, you guys need to stop with this. Just like Leandro Sousa is his name. But we had an interesting talk. He's like, whatever L you want to call them, it's just the same fish. And we put so much emphasis on the L numbers sometimes that even the color, I'm like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe we need to just take a breather and let them categorize them once in a while.
Yeah, I know. Like, I did some research, on the computer here with the king tigers. Excuse me. There's
Mhm.
actually 2 different ones. They're from the same river, but one's north and one's south.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So who's to say that they don't, you know,
If they're the same species, just a subspecies, perhaps, or something.
they could be the
Yeah.
same, that just separate. They were found in different parts of it, so that's what they did. It's you get so many people out there collecting fish, which is great because it's introducing some pretty cool stuff to us in the hobby.
Mhm.
That you know, I think it's pretty cool. I I would love to go do some collecting myself uh, down in Peru where Doc Anthony's at. I'm going to make my way down there. I don't have to win a ticket. I'm going to figure out a way to get down there myself, and I would love to go down there and learn that side of the fish hobby.
That would be great. I mean, in our Pivas club, we have Michael Barber, who also associates with um, Project Amazonas, is called. And they do offer packages as well to go fish collecting. It could be a week or 2 weeks. And honestly, not counting the flights, because the flights can be pretty pricey going all the way to Iquitos, but it's not as expensive. Like, some vacations going to like Disneyland is more expensive than going
Cool.
fish collecting. Now,
Yeah,
it's not as pleasant, but it's the adventure.
yeah. I just want to experience that side of the hobby that that part of where it all originated from. You know,
And, yeah, and it'll bring, there's so many experiences that you hear from other people that you see and you like actually experience how the fish live, what the water is like, environment, you know. There's so many things that you just can't really, even if people tell you, they might miss so many things that you have to go. I think like any serious hobbyist that really wants to understand their fish should probably go at least once in a lifetime, you know.
It's definitely a bucket list thing for me. Uh, it's just something I remember. Oh man, this is whenever I first started back in the fish hobby in 2018, and I went to YouTube because how I found fish, the fish fan is I just typed in a question
Mm-hmm.
and a crap ton of videos came up. And I'm like, what is going on here? Now I've done that with my small engines that I work on. If it stumped me, I just went there. Well, I did it with fish, and now I got about 20 tanks up and running. It's
Well,
like,
the funny thing with fish hobby is that there's so many ways to do it. And like honestly, most of them are right. A lot of groups and people become an echo chamber of what process works. But really, like there's so many different ways. You have like Father Fish that has like minimalist natural approach. And then you have like Dean Tweedledale that is like almost lab worthy fish room with like a bazillion water changes, and both work excellent. You know, it's just it's very fascinating, but sometimes I've noticed a lot of new people get confused with what is it? What's the truth? I'm like, all of it. It's all the truth. So
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you. It's all the truth. Well, you got to find your way of how you want to keep your fish that works for you. One
Yeah.
of the things that I've said before is I'm going to tell you what I've done. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think
Exactly.
everybody's water's different. So
Yeah, the water and your time and the type of tank, everything is different, you know. So he just gets jealous. Come here.
yeah.
There.
So you said you took a break from the fish hobby and you got back into it. What made you want to get back into it?
So I missed it. I just had kids and I was terrified that they would break the glass or stick their hands in or put in like a whole tub of food or you name it, you know. So I had to wait until my kids were a little older to get started. But I just I was like, okay, what kind of hobby can I get into? Because now I have a lot of extra time. I don't have to drive back and forth. I don't have to get dressed to go to work, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, you know, it would be nice to have a fish tank next to my desk, all of that, you know. And I started with a little, I think it was like a 3.5 gallon with a beta and a snail. And I'm just like, come on, you can do better than this. And it's just like, went up from that. Pretty soon all the counters were taken over by fish tanks, and then I'm like, okay, let's just set up a rack because come on.
Yeah, I have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I have 10 down here, and then I have like 8 scattered throughout the house. One of my main goals is bring them all down here.
It's so much easier. Like the problem becomes like you always want to add a new one because the fish are not compatible or you're at capacity or whatever. But then maintenance on all of it is gonna take time, you know, and you don't sometimes you don't get to enjoy your fish as much. So I do realize like adding a rack system with all the fish in a linear fashion, you put them all with the same air, and it's a lot easier to do water changes, and you actually enjoy them more because you have more time to just stare at them for a while. So I
Well,
that's my stress relief for meetings. I'm in a
listen,
meeting and I'm like, all right, I'll just stare at the fish and relax.
The best thing I've done was set this fish rack up. It's right behind the computer. And I mean, I don't do meetings on, the computer and stuff like that. But for me, this is where I come if I have a bad day at work or if I'm just going through it because of, stuff in life. I come down here and sit and just watching them. And then also, I don't have like an auto water system. I don't want one because whenever I'm doing this water change, I'm looking in the tank and I'm watching my fish, making sure everything. Now, I do use a python to fill it. But right now,
Yeah, and some tanks don't need as much. Like a lot of heavily planted tanks, in my experience, when I tested, they don't really. I'm gonna put them outside, so just give me a second. They don't really need to do several water changes. But if you have a fry tank, then obviously you have to change it more. So it's the automated ones. It's great because you change the water all the time. But as you said, you kind of ignore them after a while. So
I have noticed I wasn't really a plant guy for the longest time because I just couldn't keep certain ones alive. But as I got further into the fish hobby, I started realizing what I needed to do is, for me right now, is all about lighting. I found a cheap grow light on Amazon. They're $20 or 2 foot. Right now, I started with 2 tanks, and I saw what it was doing with the plants in there. So now I got 2 more on that rack.
And they're surprised. Like LEDs are a huge advantage to the hobby because the strength of just a good old, like Haiger LED that's like $30. It's 10 times stronger than we could ever imagine with the little T8s and like T4 bulbs and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it, like, I know a lot of people don't like to get the cheap ones, but I forgot what website did a research on them, and they're actually pretty decent. You can get plenty of really good results, and most of the plants would do very well. I would say just, start with the cheap ones. It's a good startup. And there's a lot of plants that will do good. It's just a matter of what I found out is get a bunch of different ones and see what sticks in your tank, because some do better than others always. So
I know myself, I'm not ever going to do CO2. So what I'm trying is different plants that works with my water and the way I do my hobby is what I'm looking for. Whenever I find them, that's when I buy a bunch of those plants. I just keep, going back and forth. I mean, if you think about it, what you're doing is a little experiment for yourself.
Yeah. It's so much fun to experiment, in my opinion. Like every time people are like, you can't, keep shrimp this way. I'm like, can you? Or like, this substrate sucks for that. I'm like, does it? And that's why I have so many tanks. Because I'm like, well, let's try this substrate and let's try sand and let's try, little light and let's see what happens. Most of the time you can make it work, but it's trial and error, I think. And people tend to be afraid of failure. Obviously, lives are at stake, but most of the time you're gonna fail once in a while, and you're gonna learn your lesson. So.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you from when I had my first fish tank, I was a teenager.
Yeah, I mean,
you already know where this is going.
Yeah.
What the heck is a water cycle? What is this 25% water change? What is this? You need this beneficial bacteria. Why do you need that? Fish live in water. That's all they need. You don't know that. Man, I used to take a tank this size, carry it outside. Actually, it was a little bit bigger. It was 30-some gallons.
Yep.
I would take the substrate out, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, run the hose in it, get all the muck out of it. Wipe the
clean it good.
I mean, it was sparkling. Now I know why all these damn fish kept dying on me, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Oh my God. I'm ashamed to say I was one of the teenagers that had a half-a-gallon container for a beta, and I had a divider on it. and there was one male and one female on there. I'm just like, I would slap myself, if I went to the best. But they actually, the male jumped over and they like put a bubble nest, and then I had to kick it into high gear and kind of try to understand how the breeding thing worked. And I managed to save like 10 babies from that. But after that, I upgraded them to a slightly bigger 2-gallon tank. It was a mansion for. I'm just like, I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, dude, like, wow, what is this? But
That's funny. Now
yeah.
you said about, well, obviously you have bred betas, and by that, whenever you first did it, it was an accident, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now you're wanting, you said Starlight Galaxy beta.
They're Black Star Galaxy, so they are black bodied with shimmering like dots, and some of them have red, some don't. They are also called avatars, like their, fancy name. They're somewhat new. They came out in 2010-ish, give or take. Um, there's a lot of new varieties, like, and I love the names. Like, there's one called Hellboy, for example, which
Oh, yeah,
has
that's it.
the really solid red or yellow with the back colors of whites and blues, and Nemos. And there's like, I think there's one called the Hulk that's starting to become more popular. That's like a shimmering green, and the Thailand's coming up with like the craziest names you can possibly imagine, but it's hard to keep up, to be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
the Candy Kois and the anything that's Galaxy. I'm pretty sure that there's like the Coppers, and there's a lot of varieties. But you gotta kind of pick something to breed them, and I don't want to just breed, whatever lineage together. So I actually got like well thought out, high graded betas to kind of breed together and get into that. I did breed them a year ago. I bred embellished betas. I had yellow tail embellished beta. So they're a little rare. They're like purple with yellow tails. They're also called the peaceful betas. They're not that peaceful. They're just as aggressive. But they're wild. Obviously, they're more closer to their. These are captive bred, but they're closer to their wild relatives. So they're jumpers like you wouldn't believe. So I lost two like that, and I kept the babies, and then eventually I sold them off. And I'm like, nah, I'll stick with the well-tamed betas, because I usually don't like lids on many of my tanks other than plant cover.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, for now it's just Galaxy betas.
I'm gonna have to look that up here later because that seems like a very interesting beta. You know, I had a dragon scale beta that I found at my LFS,
hmm
and them things are awesome also. But
Yeah, Dragon Scale. It was that one came in 2000. It was revolutionary at the time because it looks so cool, especially the true dragons that have either the full body and then the black or the red scales. There's ones called Samurai, which only have like the top half that are dragon color, or the
yeah,
scales. Those are really cool. I've had those before.
yeah, the
The
one,
only problem with them is the diamond eye. Sometimes the scales are overgrown over their eyes and they become blind over time. Most reputable breeders will try to breed that out of the line, but many times it's inevitable. So kind of
well,
have.
if it's something that's genetic, it's kind of hard to get rid of it, right?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a gamble because the way the scales grow is not predictable.
Mhm.
So a lot of the breeders will not breed the betas that are already basically blind, but you might still end up getting one with that. So if anyone wants to keep a dragon beta, then you kind of have to, or and it doesn't have to be a dragon, any beta with dragon skills, you kind of have to make sure that you have a plan in case they go blind, because they would essentially become a special needs fish at that point. They
I,
can do
I,
just fine, but
I got to tell you, I got lucky with mine. He didn't end up getting that.
nice.
Now he did. He did go for a roller coaster ride,
Oh boy.
and I thought that was it. But I got to tell you, he nothing. He bounced back. I added a little salt into that little tank, and he was fine.
Nice.
He stayed away from
Yeah.
that hose.
They are pretty tough. Most betas are actually really hardy, which is why they're a good beginner fish. But a lot of the new genetic ones tend to have a lot more issues. Like the crown tails get bloat because their bodies are shorter.
Yeah.
The koi ones get um, cancer very easy. Koi or the multicolor betas are fascinating to me because they have a thing called a jumping gene. It's a gene that literally jumps from one part of the genome to another and it expresses itself. So that's why they change colors so widely, is because their genes are literally bouncing around as the fish grows and develops. The problem with that is that sometimes the gene will not reproduce or jump properly, and then it can become malignant and a type of cancer. And it will cause issues down the line. But the only reason you have so many like insanely wild colorations that change so much is because of that gene. And we do have a lot of nerds in our fish group. There's a couple geneticists and scientists, and we'll just nerd out over all the details of it. There's a lot of research on going over that, but it's really cool.
Hey.
It's a lot we don't know about fish to this date, but luckily, I think I wish that research papers would become more available and that hobbyists would link up with researchers more often, because many times hobbyists know a lot more than researchers do because we handle them all the time. We have all the time in the world to deal with them. But
Here's I'm just going to use myself an example. I can't write those big words. I can't pronounce those big words. So it's going to be in the redneck language. Who do you think's going to want to buy that paper? You're going to have somebody that'll translate it.
yeah.
I know, like for me, but I mean, there is a lot of very smart people in this fish hobby that the things that they do, it's just amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, but going back to the Corys, there's my friend Riva. She's great. If you guys ever have an opportunity to hear in a talk, then I highly recommend. But she has a pet turtle. Her name is Max, and we celebrate every year the turtle's birthday. We have a birthday party. But last time we're talking about how she's been doing research about the behavior of Cory catfish and how they communicate with each other. They do the nudging behaviors and things like that. But there's a little controversy as to whether it is true that Cory catfish breed by the female swallowing the semen of the male and then getting fertilized that way. There's only one research done in Japan like many years ago, and there's a lot of people observing that behavior, but a lot of hobbyists think that they're not actually swallowing it, they're just transporting it. So the jury's still out on that, but if they do swallow it, it would be one of the weirdest reproductive methods.
I actually would like to know that, because it's funny you say. I was sitting here watching the Barbados one night, and actually I was on a stream, and they just started breeding. They did tee off, but after the female was done laying the eggs, I noticed over there in the corner the male was going over top of them. So that really put something in my mind: is how do they actually breed? How do they, I I'm gonna have to do
Yeah.
some reading because that whenever I saw that, it reminded me of what angelfish do. There are a lot of egg
Yeah.
layers do.
Yeah. And it's funny because well, Corys are one of the ones where you actually need more males than females because females would be the ones selecting the male. But the research that the Japanese people made actually put dyes in the eggs, and it showed that the external membrane went through the mouth of the female, but it wasn't sure if those eggs would have been fertile or not. So the jury's still out. Some people do believe that they get fertilized by the female eating them, and other people are like, I don't know, I'm not so sure about that. So I would like to know, but we need somebody to start doing some research on that. And you have to get creative as to how to test out that theory, and that will probably involve opening up some like female quarries and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. I would imagine that you would think that there would be some kind of paper out there on that.
there's
Well,
only one, and we just got to get somebody interested. And the problem with scientists wanting to do research on something is they have to, unfortunately, they have to get funded by a university that needs to make money off of it. So a lot of research of just fish, the universities or the people that would fund them are like, why? Why do you care? What's the good on the society or humans, or how can we benefit from it? And that's where the problem lays. It's very hard to find funding for a lot of the research that we would like to know as hobbyists. So, you know, we just kind of have to wait or, you know, fund it somehow. That would be nice if we have like a group where we can fund research and you'd be like, here, scientists, do this. Tell us how it's done. What's the deal with it? But,
it's very interesting because whenever I saw it, it took all beliefs out of. I don't know how they do it now. Well, I don't.
yeah.
Now, do you think that they're eating it, or whenever they ain't swallowing it and it's going into the reproductive system?
Yeah, so
Maybe whenever they're doing that, they're fanning it down.
I'm more of the belief that they probably fan it down, and the females might just take advantage and eat a few to, because that's what they do. I think, but it's possible. It would be a very odd reproductive technique for sure. But one of the arguments in favor of it is that the female usually takes its time hiding the eggs, because sometimes the males will go and eat the eggs as well. So maybe it gives them more time to find a good hiding place or things like that. I'm not sure.
I noticed that whenever my Corey's breeding, they lay eggs. I did. I noticed that if I kept the light on, they're going to go after the eggs quicker than what they would if it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I started to notice them breeding, I shut that tank down. I turned the lights off. They're on timers or whatever. But whenever I figured that out for me, that I noticed that I was getting more eggs because they can't, get. I mean, I'm sure they could see them, but maybe they're just not as attracted to them.
Right. It's yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things, for example, that you've learned by experience, and a lot of scientists wouldn't have the forethought or time to do that research, because every time they change a variable, they have to test it out and catalog it and take several weeks of research on each particular behavior. So it's a lot more methodical.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of work that definitely goes into research, and to have the tools to do it, it does unfortunately take money.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a microscope just because I think a lot of the serious hobbyists or if you keep rare species or wild ones, it's a good investment because you can do scrapes on your own and be able to see like larger parasites and things like that. But I also don't have a good enough microscope or the dyes, for example, to test out mycobacterium, for example, or any kind of bacterial infection. That takes a lot more work. So I'm like, I don't have the space or the funds for a lab, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We got 9 minutes left. One of the things I wanted to ask you is you got into clubs. You are sorry, at fish. I just did the bird thing on up, but or squirrel. But you are the vice president. What is the most what do you really love about the clubs?
Well, it brings a lot of people that nerd out with you together. So many times we bore our partners to death, and we're at work or we're with friends, and you cannot wait to talk about your fish and how they're breeding or the new type of, like I got chubby plecos the other day. It's so cool. But they, most people don't care. So when you come to a club to interact and talk to them, they will care and they're going to be like, oh my God, that is so cool. And probably give you advice or stories, kind of like what we do here. And also, our clubs try to bring in more knowledge people and opportunity to interact with each other and hopefully make the hobby a little bit cheaper by swapping around, like equipment or fish and things of that nature. Like I've gotten some of the best deals and the best fish at clubs just because people like a breeder or a wholesaler that will breed for profit, like in Asia, will just feed them the bare minimum and breed them as quickly as possible. We, and I bet you do too, spoil the heck out of the fish. It's like, oh my God, what's the
Boy.
nutritional balance of your food? And you feed them probably live all the time. And, you get the tip top cream of the crop of the fish from club goers and from other breeders. So, that's kind of the thing.
I'm always on the lookout for different foods. I found one, and it's mainly because of these guys here. It's made by Ron Sicklets. He
I've
don't
heard of them.
need he don't have like a big facility. He does it on his own. We actually have somebody that's in our fish fam, Joe Stan. He makes his own also.
Nice.
I keep forgetting to get them to get some off him because I wanted to try it. Like he made his own fried food and everything.
That's
And,
dedication.
well, whenever I read, like this guy, he makes his own fried food. Whenever I read it, that's what I feed my Corys now. Whenever they first are starting out, once they, use up the whole egg sack, I feed that fry food because it's high in proteins. It has everything in it that they need. The fillers are very minimal.
That's good.
And that from what I've used before other fried food, I've noticed a big difference in this fried food now.
Nice.
So I mean, it's all about going out in and looking for different things. I mean,
yeah, and I think variety is what's important, right? If you think about it, like the fish in the wild will eat like anything that falls in the water, they'll nibble on, and we should try to mimic a variety of foods as much as possible. And I do believe in like supporting your local, businesses or like your breeders because they really care a lot more about the product that they give rather than the profit many times. So,
and that was the whole. And I want to bring this up before I forget. That's the whole purpose of the Fish Fam auction. Is yourself? You joined us this month.
mm-hmm.
Going to be doing it again May 13th. That's a Saturday. If anybody that breeds fish has fish that they have too many of and they want to get rid of them and knows how to ship them, you can contact us at fishfamauction@gmail.com and we'll get you up there. And the reason for that is to give out high quality fish. You know that, like you said, how we spoil our fish.
Mm-hmm.
We take good care of them. We're watching them all the time, and whenever we have babies, we're like, oh man, I gotta. Actually, it's a good excuse to set up another tank, right? But
But there comes a point where you look and you're like, oh my gosh, where did all this came from?
Yep. And, it's just a great thing. I mean, I've just this hobby alone, learning, what people do and how they did it, and just myself learning how much I care for my fish. I never thought I would get this into it, but I did. And I'm very grateful for it. And whenever, like for me, whenever the fish breed, it means I did something right.
Right. Yeah.
You figured it out. Happy. Yeah. So it's great. But yeah, that's one of the reasons that is for the Fish Fam auction is to give back to the community to get them good quality fish. Yeah. And everybody has something different in this hobby. Like I don't have the corridors that you have. You may not have some of the ones that I have.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Hey, man, I've been wanting to get them. I ain't going to charge you $100 a fish. You know what I mean? But to get the fish out there to share what you have.
Exactly. I do notice like the bigger websites, obviously they have to charge more because there's overhead, but my goodness, like sometimes the prices, I'm like, even the pet store, like you go to Petco, I'm like, you're charging how much for a bristle nose, like a normal one? It's like I can't give them away.
The Tetra is now like $3 for a neon Tetra,
and they're tiny.
So man, if you could get that down packed on doing that, man, you would be like crazy with it.
Yeah.
But all right, we're gonna go ahead and wind this down. Everybody, Suzy Q is next in a couple minutes. I want to thank the mods for posting some stuff in there, and everybody that showed up to watch us and to learn about Barbara a little bit. I'm sure you're probably going to see her around again in some later auctions coming up.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being my guest tonight. It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
So quick. Feels like we need.
It is a lot of fun.
Maybe we'll get you up here some other time too. Lurkers, thank you for being here listening. People that was involved in the chat. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your day to sit down and watch us. Somebody said $650 for a Cardinal Tetra. That's freaking nuts. See, that's what I'm saying. But all right, everybody, go ahead and move on over there and show Suzy Q some love.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.